This episode of this Focused Practical Dreamer's Journey is brought to you by energy healer Jean Border's personal, powerful transformation program. Know you're leaving money on the table, but can't figure out how to bring it in? Need to double your productivity and profitability? Need an extra push to get things moving in the right direction? Visit www.focusedpracticaldreamer.com/transformation now and apply for a business consultation with Jean. Welcome to the Focused Practical Dreamer's Journey, where we take out your emotional baggage and heal your emotional body so you get to enjoy the success you desire and deserve. Prepare to feel a sense of relief and empowerment as we get rid of the baggage you've been carrying that's held up your business success up until now. Be sure to visit our website at www.focusedpracticaldreamer.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now, lean in, get comfortable, and prepare to take off.
Hello, everyone. This is your host, Jean Border, with the Focused Practical Dreamer's Journey podcast. I have a special guest with me here today. Like most of my episodes, I have such special guests. This is Sandy Warren. She is a coach, a superpower coach, actually. She deals with super people. Wellnesswithattitude.com is her website, but there will be links below, so don't worry about writing all that down. Just look below and you'll find everything you need. Hi, Sandy. How are you?
Well, hello, Jean, and thank you very much for inviting me to join you today.
I'm so happy that you're here with me. Could you introduce yourself to our listeners? Just a little bit about who you are, what you do, how you got here.
Absolutely. My clients call me Coach Sandy, and I like to keep things very easy and personal in my style. The business is called Wellness with Attitude, and a funny aside is the reason that attitude is in here is not what you might expect. I do believe in a positive attitude and a positive mindset, and I try and share that both in my life and with my clients. But it's also because my mother told me if I didn't adjust my attitude as a teenager, I was going to get in a bunch of trouble.
Uh-oh. And you did anyway, right?
I did get in some, but I have tried to switch that around to have a positive impact, and that's where the attitude comes from for the business. So I specialize in women, particularly mid-season women who've already been through some of their journey and the ups and downs of life, and maybe want to make some adjustments going forward so that they bring less chaos and more joy into their lives. So that's kind of what I do in a nutshell.
I think you talk about personal power a bit.
I love the word power, and I do think that as women, sometimes we have given away some of our power, and my goal is to help guide women back to that power. And I like to think of it as that we all have a goddess within us. And, you can call your goddess Joe. I call her my goddess. And she's been put on the back shelf. And that's what I mean by giving up her power. She is typically someone who is very nurturing and of service to others. Often comes not as a priority to self-care. And we try and dust her off, polish her up, and send her back out into the world more empowered for the next season of her life.
And how do you start that? That sounds so easy to say, but it doesn't seem like it would be so quick and easy to do.
It's usually not, or is it easy? And it does require a certain amount of, I think, beginning, I would say the word would be curiosity. So we need to be curious about some of the things we say, some of the things we do, how we prioritize our time, what balance we have or don't have in our lives. And so when we get curious, we can kind of investigate that more completely. And then without the curiosity, I liken it to throwing spaghetti at the wall. And you don't know what's going to stick or not stick. And even though there's certainly some of that that's going to go on, we can be a little bit more focused if we get curious with ourselves and honest with ourselves first. And therein lies the rub.
Honest with ourselves. That's an interesting concept, isn't it?
It is indeed. Because I think we do, although I love stories, and I think stories can be very endearing, and we can learn from stories, I think when we tell ourselves the same story repetitively, then it undermines us. And so our curiosity has to also lead us to that honesty that then allows us to rewrite that story.
And how might we go about beginning that process?
Well, one of the tools that I use is from the course for coaches called Positive Intelligence. And it helps us to recognize that we all have characteristics that at some time probably served us very, very well. And I'll give you an example for myself. I was a single parent for about 20 years. My kids were 4 and 8 when I went through a divorce. And one of the things that I needed to do, because I was head of a household, and somehow those children still ate and grew, and so we needed money. And so I became what is called in positive intelligence, one of the characteristics, I became a controller. So I controlled what, we ate. I controlled, how many hours I was out of the house. I controlled what the kids' activities were. So it was very important for me to create the structure in our home that helped the kids to feel stable. And so I was a controller. Now you take that later in life and you go into a management position or a training position, or you're trying to work with other people. Not the best leadership tactic.
Oh, really?
So learning to respect others and their skills and their gifts. My controller had to be kind of toned down a bit. And the other part that I was a high achiever, super achiever, type-A personality, which when you're in 100% commission sales is probably pretty important. You have to be a self-starter. And would I say that my life was perfectly imbalanced during those years? I think we can safely say it was not perfectly imbalanced. I was either out working or I was with the kids running the house, and that was basically where I was. That's where my energy was, and so being a high achiever was important. And I'm not saying that I've given up being a high achiever, but I am going to say that as an entrepreneur, I am a recovering one, and so that has helped me to find the balance that I both want to have in my life. And I want to help other women have. For example, I watch my daughter, and, she is a mother of 2, and she is a copyright, a writer, an editor, and she has deadlines. And she's learned to manage those deadlines better than I did at her age. So me being able to help her to see the importance of the full circle helps me to feel like I'm kind of giving back after some of my less balanced years.
Well, so I'm just going to throw this out there. because I don't know a lot about your positive intelligence world.
Sure.
So maybe you could tell me about superpowers and saboteurs.
Well, the saboteurs, we may not have named them, but we all know that we have at least one, and that's the one that we all have for sure. And he or she is called the judge. And that's the voice that we hear in our head that says, really, what makes you think so? And who really cares? And who's going to listen? And you're an imposter. You haven't always been, on target, just as I said, out of balance. And so that's the voice that holds us back and gets in our way. So we all have at least that voice. And then there are other saboteurs that come into play. So being a high achiever is also a saboteur when it's overused or abused. And so that saboteur keeps me out of balance. It says, do more, make sure you get it right, stand out in the crowd, you need to be noticed. And the balance to that is not always visible, is usually not visible when the saboteur is in charge. So that voice is pretty loud. That imposter syndrome would be a part of a saboteur. So then what do we do with that? Again, we get curious and we look at it and we say, oh, yes, that's me. And I use an assessment that's through this organization and scientifically based. And it will give you a list of your saboteurs and the percentage that you have of that saboteur. And some of my clients will look at it and say, this is just not right. This is just wrong. This isn't really me. Most of them say, okay, I can see this, but some of them will not see it initially. Why? Because our saboteur is in charge and our saboteur is saying, no, being a high achiever is 110% great. And you need to keep that. And you need to be a controller. Otherwise, other people are going to push you around. And so that's the kind of voice that we hear in our head. And so learning to say, I hear you. You can go in the corner now. I'm not going to listen to this. I'm going to use empathy. And I'm going to be kind to myself. And I'm going to recognize that people really do want to hear an authentic voice. And they really do want to be praised or encouraged. And they're not going to see me as false for doing that. So that's kind of how, when we recognize that saboteur is in our ear, in our head, in our subconscious, in our habits and our beliefs, we can recognize that saboteur and send it to the corner and weaken it. So there are skills, just like when we go to a gym. Now, I'm the first one to tell you that I teach yoga. I do a lot of yoga. I do a lot of walking, and I don't like weights. I went to a weight trainer who was a bodybuilder, and she was in her 50s, and, she's got this amazing body. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe I can just really lift weights, and all of a sudden I'm going to find that other body inside me. But, the consistency to do that just wasn't really there. But the consistency to work on my mindset, like it's a muscle, because it is, scientifically, what we repeat in our head becomes more a part of us. And so the positive intelligence treats our mindset like we're working on our muscle. So I would be working on my empathy muscle or my compassion muscle, that kind of thing. So I liken it to the physical side because we're used to picturing that. Just as I'm not going to go out and do a 10K without having done my homework to build up to that. That gives you an idea?
Yeah. So when you work with someone, because you mentioned that you have an assessment, is that how you start?
I'd like to start with a conversation first, because I think the assessment as a standalone tool is a great tool, But I really think that making sure that the individual that I speak with, that we have a communication so that I can first determine if they're really feeling that this is a time for them to grow, to be curious. And if in fact we decide that, yes, I want to grow. Yes, I'm not happy with where I am. I'm feeling a lot of chaos in my life, or I'm overwhelmed, or I'm in that mid-season of life when my kids have gone off, or I've just gone through a divorce. Determining if this is the right time for them, and allowing them to decide if they want to take the next step is usually where I go before the assessment.
The right time is a key phrase for me. I set up my business with the understanding that the right client would find me at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
And my whole business, that's my business model right there. When people are ready, they find me.
Exactly. And I think it's often an excuse that we can say, oh, I don't have the time. And sometimes that really needs to be walked in, I would say, because there are that's again the saboteurs talking to us. You don't really have the time. You don't really have the money. You know, that kind of thing. But when we're curious and honest, we can say, if I have enough money to go and get my hair cut or colored or a manicure or go to a massage, none of those things, though I love all of those things, but none of those things help our mindset. They don't help to take really the chaos out of our life. They don't help to rediscover that goddess. So you can walk in the I don't have time scenario the same way. What am I doing? Where can I find, 15 minutes a day to meditate or to take and listen to a podcast or to take that walk, to do the work. So once I determine that with a client, just as you said, then the timing is right for both of us, because as a coach, you well know that we're investing in them and we're asking them to trust us. So it has to be a mutual agreement.
The saboteurs that you address, are they all internal?
Yes, I would say they're all internal, but do they appear in our world? I think that would also be a yes, because we have friends, we have family, we have coworkers, we have kids, we have sisters, they can appear in different ways, though it's not really them. It's still how we react with those external circumstances. So it's really still our personal internal saboteurs, even though one of the saboteurs is about blame and one of the saboteurs is about being a victim. And so we might feel a victim, or another saboteur is an avoider. And so, there are people in our lives that we can feel that we're a victim, or that present things in our lives that push us into being an avoider. We avoid certain situations. So the question is a very key, sharp question, because it can look like it's outside of us, but it really ultimately comes down to being within us.
Some of the things you mentioned, I'm very big on personal power. Okay. I take back your personal power to heal, to grow, to lead, to live your life. Some of the things you mentioned were, I'll go with one, blame. If you're blaming someone else for your circumstances, you've given away all of your power. You're saying that person or that situation has total control over me. I have nothing to do with it. At some point, there could be recognition that, well, I allowed myself to get in that situation, even though I was iffy about being there in the first place, or I allowed myself to stay in a situation that I knew was escalating because I didn't want people to think that I couldn't handle it. And then it becomes somebody else's fault for creating an issue that, had you taken on your personal power, perhaps you would have been removed from the situation or would have made another choice. So blaming and becoming a victim, now sometimes you just are a victim. If you're mugged in the street and you've done the best you can to protect yourself, you are flat out a victim of that circumstance. I'm not in any way, shape, or form taking any of the trauma away from that. That was outside your control. But so many things, we just go along or get along or float along or let things happen to us without saying, wait a minute, becoming aware, to use your term, curiosity, what could I do differently to change my current circumstance? Right?
I think you're exactly right. And even to the point of, we want to be liked. We don't want to have people dislike us. And that, at many times, is giving away our personal power. I remember clearly when my daughter was a teenager, one of her friends said to her, well, if you really liked me, you would do X, Y, and Z. And I held my breath as I waited for my daughter's response. And she said, I believe that if you really thought of me as your friend, you would not ask me to do that. I think, I just got the shivers myself. I mean, because that's when as a parent, you probably walked the right route.
Mm-hmm.
But I think oftentimes we women have given away that power, and we don't realize it as relinquishing power because we want to make the other person happy and we want to be liked. And there's nothing wrong with making the other person happy as long as you don't have to give up something that's your core belief in order to do so. And, I think not asking someone else to compromise themselves is a form of empathy. It's a form of love, and giving people space to have the ability to set a boundary and to say no, which is the other thing I'm pretty passionate about. And I would put money on the fact that you are too. So it is that personal power, and that is what dusts off the goddess. Every single time we acknowledge our belief, we acknowledge our core values, and we stand up for them, then we're dusting off the goddess. We're taking a step forward into being more empowered, more authentic. And both the empowerment and being authentic also requires us to be vulnerable.
And that's scary.
And that is exactly scary. Yes. And that takes a little time. Takes a little time to say, these are my values, these are my core values. That's where I'm not willing to relinquish. I am standing for X, Y, or Z. I'm going to stand in that authenticity, and I may not be liked for it. And I may, in fact, and I have lost friends who just, I guess I would say they just didn't want to play nice. They didn't want to be real and authentic, whether it's gossip or whether it's undermining or it's jealousy. And those are things that are negative and impact us negatively. And it's time to step away.
But isn't that being selfish?
Oh, absolutely. I'm selfish.
some of the listeners might not get that. Sorry, that was a leading question.
I understand. But selfish is self-care, and having ways to take care of ourselves empowers us to take care of others. If we weaken ourselves, then we weaken our ability for the gifts that we can give to others. But we don't think of being selfish that way. If you're running on empty and you're so exhausted and you're living in chaos and you're always juggling to get to the next moment, then you just don't have the energy, the positive mindset to give to someone else. So it is essential. That's one of the things, mid-season women are often caregivers. Maybe it's not for those kids that are going out the door and off to college and getting married and doing all those wonderful things that they should do. Sometimes it's taking care of a family member. And it's very easy to get sucked into forgetting to take care of yourself. In fact, statistically, the caregiver often winds up deceased before the person that they were taking care of. And that is something that most caregivers are not facing, and we're not, and they're not educated in it either. I mean, the organizations that come in they're there for the mom or the dad or the sister or whatever it might be. And so their job is not so much to take care of the caretaker, but that caretaker really needs to be supported.
I've not heard that before. That's very believable, but I've not heard that before.
Yes. Yeah. Statistically, it's a nasty little statistic. And I was a caregiver for my mom, and I did have to be very careful, and take an aware stance on myself, because you can feel the tension, you can feel the exhaustion, and you certainly don't want to let anybody down. You want to show up, but in order to show up, you have to be self.
Yeah, I took care of my dad. He was aware and mobile, almost up to the end, but
Yep.
The last week I just got to the point where I just couldn't anymore, and I finally had to let my brother know that I needed help.
Absolutely.
But before that, it was just, I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll do it.
Mhm.
And then, the one thing happens when the light bulb goes off and it says, enough.
Yeah. And because of our nature, we think we can handle more than we can actually handle. And I know I had to call my sister because my mother had been living with us for a time. And I said, I need time off. And it was during COVID, and she didn't want to fly. And I said, I get it, but you need to figure out a way, because I need your help, and you need to be here. Ultimately, that was the other side of the coin. Sometimes the people who want to avoid really need to step in, because ultimately that is going to keep them whole. That is going to be a really important ingredient for them to know that they did not avoid, and that they had the compassion and the empathy for themselves as well. I mean, that is, relationships don't come all sugar coated like we thought when we were 16, and there is no knight in shining armor. And, so we have to fortify ourselves, and we have to know the people that we can turn to and depend on to be in an honest, vulnerable, authentic relationship with us, whether it's it can be a best friend. Some of us have best friends that are probably equally as important to us as a family member, and some maybe more. So it just is finding the source of energy, the people with the positive mindset, the people with the empathy, and we need to be that people. And if we're not doing self-care, we're not going to be that people for them either.
Okay, we've spent a lot of time talking about the negatives. Let's turn and talk about the superpowers. What can you tell me there? Let's give our listeners some hope some joy.
You see Wonder Woman? That flashy there? That's the one. That is the one. It's funny because I just did a talk recently called The Power of Voice. And as I was preparing for that, thinking about our superpowers in positive intelligence, we call it our stage force. It's that strength that we build from that using those muscles, practicing and using those muscles. And as I was preparing, I thought to myself, I knew that when I went through this positive intelligence course that Wonder Woman came to my mind just immediately. And I thought, why did Wonder Woman come to my mind? And well, it's because when I was a young woman, a young mother particularly, there were not too many women role models. So there was Wonder Woman, straight out of the comic book. Man, she was cool, and she always did good stuff. And she did help other people. And she stood up for those less strong and more vulnerable than she was. And so I would say, I remember standing in my mirror in the mornings and, just knowing that some days were going to be way tougher than others. And I would polish up my belt and I'd say, okay, sister, we got a lot to do today. So we are going to be strong. We are going to be powerful. Let's go, Wonder Woman. You're my deal. You're inside me today. You're my energy. And it's taking on that persona and giving yourself that energy, that picture in your mind. And then you go out and you do what needs to be done, and you do it, with kindness or authentic energy or love or whatever it is. But you bring those forces of good to the world, and it's exciting. It's a vibration. It's a whole nother energy. So I think the Wonder Woman for me is what it is. It doesn't, I mean, it can be something that a woman, creates for herself. It can be an imaginary. You can, and that's the other reason I call it a goddess, because I never thought of myself as a goddess. I don't know. She's beautiful and she's got a waistline, which I've lost, and, that kind of thing. I mean, so I didn't see myself as a goddess. And the more I said it, and then certain people would say, well, I don't really know that you should say goddess, because I think that maybe people aren't going to really relate. And so I thought about it and I thought, no, that's what resonates with me. That's where my authenticity is. That's where my energy comes from. And so that's why I toss it out. And that's our sage power. That's our superpower, our Jedi force, if you will.
Are you into Star Wars?
I'm not. I don't know a lot about Star Wars, but I certainly can conjure up in my mind the Jedi Force, So that's about how much I know. And who was it? Princess Leia. She was like a pretty cool woman. So
Very strong.
Very strong. So people might relate. They love Star Wars. They might say, Princess Leia. That's my superpower.
So some of our listeners are actually either in business or just starting that direction. How easy was it for you to move from mother of two to the businesswoman you are now?
Patience, which I would have said I don't have a ton of, but I do have work ethic. And I think that I was a sales director with Mary Kay Cosmetics. So when I went into that, selling cosmetics, I didn't realize that I was selling dreams and giving women a way to have their own money and freedom. That was more than a few years ago. It was a time when a woman couldn't even get a bank loan to order the product that we wanted to have in Mary Kay. You had to get a code signature. And so once I helped women to get that first loan and get that first product or spend that money that was earmarked for the family, it started to empower them. And the more I saw that the business was empowering them, the more it empowered me. And so I went on to become a pink Cadillac driver, which did feed the kids and did pay the bill. So that was good. And I stayed with that for a number of years. But it brought me to believe that when you work and when you put in the time and when you keep the belief going, there are going to be hurdles and there's going to be doubt, but it has to come from within, that you have a passion. And there will be, and I'll tell you honestly, both when I went into staying with Mary Kay, as I went through the divorce, and I did not go back into the medical field, which is where I was trained, my mother and father pointed out that I was not being a responsible adult, that I needed to go back to work and I needed to have benefits, and I really shouldn't expect to be able to pay the bills and take care of my children. So there's two ways to look at that. Number one, I'm going to take the safe route and I'm going to go back and do that. And then I will have my parents' support and also friends. There were friends that also thought I should go back and take the safe route. Or you just have to believe in yourself and know that you're going to get people who are naysayers and people who are not going to support you and maybe step away from you. Maybe because you threaten them. Maybe because you're making the choice differently than they would have made. And you kind of have to be willing to say, okay, I get it. I can love you anyway, but I'm going to move on because I need to have people around me that are going to be have a positive support for me. They don't even have to believe that I'm doing the right thing. They just have to be, positive in their communication. And I think that that's an important ingredient for people going into business. And it can happen when it's going to happen when you're new. I mean, the first 3 years of any business, and I've started with several, are really probably going to test your mettle and make you get down and dirty about your plan and who your best client is and that kind of thing. But it can appear later also when the economy shifts or something is very popular. I mean, look at Blockbuster. We all went out and got the movies, every Saturday night. And now, I mean, to bring Blockbuster into our environment, it's not going to be a successful business model. So do we have to be flexible? Do we have to watch what's happening in the world? Do we have to be able to adjust? And that can happen if you've been in business successfully for 10 years. Okay, the only thing that is consistent is change. And I think that's true. Change is going to happen to us, and we have to be flexible enough to adapt and to find a way to stay real to our goal, but understand that we may need to adjust our plans and our focuses and maybe who our best client is or what our products are or whatever it may be, our services.
I just heard about back when COVID had a very big hold on everyone.
Right.
A restaurant that actually their business took off because they offered this new thing called curbside service delivery. And with every order, you got a roll of toilet paper.
I love it.
With all the scarcity mindset that went on, we're going to run out of toilet paper, the world's going to come to an end. It was a business, so commercial businesses could still get the bulk toilet paper. So with every order came a roll of toilet paper so you wouldn't run out. So their business grew. I thought that was just hilarious. Such a unique thing to do.
Absolutely. It is about being creative. It's about doing something that, your neighbor isn't doing. And I heard the same kind of story about two restaurants on the opposite side of the street. One put up a drive-through and made it easy to get the food. And the other one sat there saying, in the fear mindset, oh my, we're going to starve. Well, yeah, you probably will. If you're not willing to be flexible and adjust and give the consumer the service that they need or the product that they need, I think that we have to be be creative and energetic and have a positive mindset and get out and do the next thing, even if we're afraid. And we probably will be. Just because we have fear doesn't mean we have to become immobilized. We have to move through the fear and go and ask for help and get the resources that we need. That's what anybody who is going to be an entrepreneur or solopreneur has to have, that willingness to risk.
I think they also have to have the ability to evaluate what they're doing to see whether it's serving them. Maybe they need to totally eliminate part of a process, or maybe they just need to tweak it slightly.
Yes.
I'm very big on this whole 1% change. If you keep your eye, I just spent a week on a ship, okay? So the way you steer a ship is not directly on. It's going to, go with the currents, move with the flow. The waves are going to move you around, but you keep your eye on where you want to be. And you just do these little course corrections as you go. The same is true in business. This works a little bit, but maybe not as quickly as I'd like. So maybe if I just tweak this part, it'll put me back on course, back on the timeline I'd prefer, right? And you just do these little I call them 1% course changes. And you notice the progress.
Yeah.
And the progress creates within us a feeling of satisfaction, of relief that it's working, and excitement that I can see that it's working. So many emotions come up when you can evaluate from a logical point of view and then feel how the change makes you feel.
To that very point, we don't celebrate our successes enough. And it doesn't have to be $1,000 contract or a big, I just got 5 new clients, or it is as simple as hearing somebody which their mindset, their celebration, their acknowledgement of something that they did well, or making a step that they were afraid to make, or having that service that you offer, really, really impact somebody. And we need to remind ourselves that it's not about just being onto the net. What charges our batteries is celebrating those successes and having maybe somebody to celebrate it with in conversation, somebody to jump up and down, or maybe it's just, saying to yourself, I haven't had an ice cream cone in forever. And I'm just going to go get myself an ice cream cone and remind myself that I helped somebody today and it had a positive impact. And I'm really excited about that. So celebration, I think, is also key.
I totally agree. We're just getting over football season, so I'm going to use the whole football visual. Every time you go 10 yards, you get a reward. You get to start over like you never dropped the ball, 4 times or whatever it was. And every time you get the ball between these funny little posts, you get a whole lot of points and the crowd goes crazy. What have you done? You moved a ball up and down a field. That's really it. But look at all the celebration that happened for each little step along that specific length of time journey.
That's a great analogy. And I think that, I encourage some of my clients that we don't remember to do things, because I'm also a yoga instructor. So when my students are anxious, and I encourage them to use their breath to get them refocused or to calm them down. And I do the exact same thing when I coach my clients. We usually begin with a breathing technique and settling down so that we are more receptive and less defensive. But in our daily life, whether we set our Fitbit to every hour to remind us to stand up and move around and take a breath, or I think I probably have more yoga students brushing their teeth on one foot so that they remember to practice their balance, because that's their trigger. Brushing their teeth is their trigger. And making a cup of tea in the afternoon is their trigger to breathe. So we don't remember to do things for our own self-care unless we set some kind of marker, some kind of trigger. So whether you put it down in your calendar, or whether you tell your watch to remind you, or, the dog, if you have a dog, the dog needs to go out every 3 hours. And so you are encouraged to move. And then when you're moving and walking, and then you remember to breathe. So we need to have these little triggers to keep us on track and to keep us positive.
That triggered a memory for me when I was learning muscle testing.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. I set these little reminders. I was in a building with elevators, right? Every time I got in the elevator, I had to spend the time practicing. And if I was at home watching TV, which didn't happen a lot because I was in Italy and the TV was not reliable, we'll say. The connectivity was not reliable.
Right.
You'd get near the end of a show and it would cut off. And so you wouldn't know what happened at the end. So after enough of that, you say enough. But if I was watching TV, anytime a commercial came on, I had to practice during the commercial.
Mm-hmm.
Now I do it without thinking. But in the beginning, it required conscious thought and conscious concentration to get myself into the habit of utilizing these new skills.
And I think that's exactly right. And if you're new in business and you haven't developed those consistent habits, you have to have some kind of trigger to set you in motion. So whether it's, looking at your month and writing down the 10 yards that you move the ball forward, that new service that you provided, or that new client that you provided for, those 10-yard markers seen in the course of a month are very positive. The quarterly planning is huge. Setting your bigger dreams once a year. And what happens sometimes, you've been in business for 5 years, 7 years, and you think you've got it. And then you realize, I haven't really done a good year-long plan. I don't really have my quarterly targets marked out. I need to sit down and redo that. It's what got me to this point. And now, as Mary Kay would say, you can never rest on your laurels. You need to get up and do it again. Her motto was get up and join the 5 o'clock club. And I can honestly say that the 5 o'clock club was not in my to-do list. And I am also not a great consistent journaling person. And so there's a lot to be said for that. I've probably gotten 4 or 5 or 6 different journal books thinking the book is going to make the difference. The book does not make the difference. You too. But I am good at waking up in the morning and focusing on what I want to accomplish during the day. I may ask my angels for help. I may feel a moment of inspiration. So we all have to find our tool that gets us into our day to support us in a positive mindset manner, an energetic manner that inspires us, that lifts us, whatever the word is, whatever the picture is. I know Mel Robbins is great for saying, thumbs up, you've got this. So if it's as simple as that, I have, some of my clients, since I work with women, I love to, because we women are notorious for looking in the mirror in the morning and not saying nice things to ourselves. And so I have my clients look in the mirror and say, damn, you're gorgeous. Wow, you're like amazing. And it's the same thing as polishing up that Wonder Woman belt. So the words we use for ourselves to lift us up are words that we will probably turn around and use to help others. And I think that that's great. But business can, whether you're in for the first year, the first 3 years, or 13 years in, sometimes you can take things for granted or you just miss your stride or you forget some of the things that really got you there.
I just have to throw this out on journals. I have so many journals. I like blank journals too, so I can create my own. But I'll sort of rotate through them because some of them are really great, but I'll get bored with it. And so I'll switch to another one. And then I'll eventually get bored with that and I'll switch to another one. And eventually I'll come back to one of the others. So they're all useful.
Absolutely.
But it comes back to timing for me and what my priorities are. Because different
variety.
Yeah, different journal authors bring with them a different focus. And I find that I have a low threshold of boredom. And so I'll get to a point where I want to look at things differently. So I shift. I mean, they're all still about what do I need to accomplish? What are the goals? But they're presented slightly differently for each one. They're on different paper. It has a different feel. The book feels different in my hand. I might use a different color ink or multiple color inks, But the point is to get you engaged and to keep you aware of where you are and where you're going, focused on how you need to get there and what strategic action you need to take to move you along in your journey. Because it's not about finally getting there, because then you say, now what? It's getting there where the growth happens and the experiences are.
Absolutely true. And that's one of the other, and I thank you for, as independent as we are and as strong as we are, it's always nice to have somebody else say, oh, I'm like that too. I get bored too. And I like variety too. And, the thought of, when you put your head on the pillow, thinking about the 5 things and the 3 things that were really of value to you that day, I think is another great tool. But there are some nights when I look at the pillow and I'm asleep. So I might not do that. And we just have to use the tool that works for us. And I think that finding it, some people are very, very, very strategic and very dedicated in their routine. And that's wonderful. And that keeps them authentic with how they operate. But we're not all the same, and we need to find out what works for us. And I'll give you a quote, if I may, that helps me sometimes when I might just go a little awry. It says, focus on what you are chasing. Never forget your why. Connect to your future. Be patient with the when. And dedicate your life to grow and serve. And that helps me when I'm feeling like I might be off my mark a little bit, or my energy is then depleted, or whatever it might be that might be just derailing me a little or a lot. That helps me, especially when I am not the most patient person in the world. It's something I consistently work on, being more patient. And so when be patient with the when, I think that addresses what you talked about earlier. When the right client is ready for us, they will find us. And it's not our time. It's the bigger picture time.
Agree.
One of the reasons that I just recently, because of listening to so many women and their concerns, I just recently, in fact this week, started a Serendipity Circle. Because I want to give women a safe place to land, a safe place to find out they're not alone, a safe place to be encouraged to bring their concerns. So this month we're talking about gratitude, and next month we'll talk about expectations. And I don't do, I open it up with 10 or 15 minutes to kind of get the juices rolling, but then I turn it over to them. And last night when we were talking, the last time I had looked at the clock, I thought, well, we don't have to be here for a whole hour. So I'm going to let them, kind of wrap it up at 30, 35 minutes. And before I knew it, I needed to wrap it up because I need to honor their time. And we were at an hour. because everybody just started to share. And that's really what I think we women are missing, that sense of community, that place to ask the question, that place to not feel alone, and to feel the support of other women who are, maybe they're the same age, maybe they're different age. I don't think age is really the whole picture. I think it's where we are in our journey. And we can learn from those older than us, and we can learn from those younger than us. And we can be inspired by both as well. And so that's why I started the Serendipity Circle. And I'm excited because it gives me a platform to share, whether it's sharing from positive intelligence or whether it's sharing the book on essentialism or on atomic habits or Jay Shetty's meditations, which are very different than many. So it's bringing in the things that I have used to help me grow as a coach and sharing whatever tidbit might be of value to the women who show up.
So with all that, people can find you on Facebook, on Pinterest, on YouTube, on LinkedIn, on your website. You're all over the place.
Once again, I get bored.
I get that.
I had somebody help me with the Pinterest, and I thought, oh my, I haven't even been in there in a while. I need to drop in. YouTube is probably my favorite.
Really?
Because I enjoy training. I was a trainer for so many years, and I think YouTube gives me a venue to use that training. And one of my favorites is on expectation, and it was called The Christmas with No Dinner. And so as much as I thought I had grown as a parent, a mother, support for my adult children, I became vividly aware that I had an unrealistic expectation. And so I learned, I grew, and it took tears. And I think business too, whether it's family life, whether it's our own personal growth, whether it's business, we bring us, our core values, our fears and our hopes and our dreams and our skills, whatever it is, we are a whole person, and we bring that into our personal life. We bring that into our business life. We bring that into our relationship. So back to being curious about who we really are and who we want to be. And our habits, our values, our expectations are all part of that. And when we get more clarity on all of that, that's when we can become more whole and more and live within our authentic self.
Well, on that topic of clarity, self-clarity, you have an assessment through the Positive Intelligence website that our listeners can log into and take, and it's
it's free and it's private. They don't have to share it with me, so I don't get the result just because they go in through that portal.
Okay. And then there's also you've got two gifts here, a free ebook on resistance to resilience, and we'll have the link for that as well. But her website is wellnesswithattitude.com. But again, the links are down below. Sandy, thank you so much for this conversation. I really enjoyed myself.
Well, I enjoyed you, and I think we have some energy in common, and I think it's how we women empower each other. We share, we're vulnerable, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So thank you for inviting me to play with you today.
Do you have any final thoughts for our listeners?
Trust yourself, your gut, your intuition. The judge lives in our logic. And so the logic is critical to business when you're making financial decisions and when you're creating your goals. But the judge also lives there, and the judge lies. So we need to stay in our Wonder Woman power and our intuition, and that is what's going to lead us through the forest.
The judge lies. I like that. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for laughing and giving us an arena to play. We need to play and celebrate. So thank you for allowing both.
Yes, I really enjoy myself here. And thank you to the listeners. We'll see you next time. This is Jean Border, your host with the Focused Practical Dreamer's Journey.
Thank you for tuning in to the Focused Practical Dreamer's Journey, where we take out your emotional baggage and heal your emotional body so you get to enjoy the success you desire and deserve. Remember to visit our website at www.focusedpracticaldreamer.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Focused Practical Dreamer's Journey.